Hey everyone, Alec from Shape Gaming here. Have you ever been mindlessly playing your DPS thinking, I wonder what it'd be like to play a role that's important? Then you've come to the right place. If healing is something that you're interested in or considering making a switch to, let's take a look at the pros and cons of healing PvE content in World of Warcraft so you can determine whether or not to make the switch to healing. Let me start by saying that I'm a healer main with prior tanking experience, so I'm a bit biased in so much as I believe healing is one of the most impactful and engaging roles to play in all PvE content. That being said, let's start with the cons so that we can end on a positive note. Here are some of the reasons why people who try to heal tend to swap back to DPS or tank. Imagine you're in a Mythic Plus situation, you're rocking those heals, everything is going great, and then DPS decides that if they just stand in a puddle of liquid magma for 2 more seconds, then they could top the DPS charts. As you know, that DPS dies, and it's clearly not your fault that they decided to test their fire resistance, but they can't help but blame your lack of heals. There's often a perspective, especially from the average skilled player base, that your job is to heal them through all of the stupid, and that when they die, often of their own making, that they usually blame the healer for not keeping them alive through it. It's important in these situations to remember a few things that will help keep you in the right mindset and to help you continue healing. While there may be instances where you could have kept a player alive, in my experience, DPS players tend to die due to not using their defenses proactively, trying to dump all of their DPS cooldowns into mobs before the tank has established aggro, or just standing in stupid. Unfortunately, you may also receive the same type of complaints and blame from your tank, and similar to DPS, I've often found that the tank dies because they either mismanage their defensive resources, they pull too big or beyond what they're capable of, or in raid situations they incorrectly tank swap. Now don't get me wrong, there are certainly times when it's the healer's fault for deaths and group wipes, but this normally boils down to experience with the spec you're playing and understanding the damage patterns that are about to occur. Regardless of the reason for a player's death or a group wipe, remember that healing, like any role, takes practice, and that you should give yourself a little grace when wipes occur. I'm going to be honest and tell you that I find healing to be the most stressful of the 3 roles in all PvE content. Ultimately, you often become the primary reason why content gets cleared. Obviously, there are DPS checks that need to be met, and there are some great tanks out there that can solo portions of content. However, without a healer to keep the group alive, you're almost certain to wipe. Another stressor with healing is sometimes you're forced to prioritize who gets healed and lives, and who gets to watch the rest of the fight lying on the ground. For some players, this stress or anxiety can be difficult to handle, leading them to revert back to their tank or DPS roles. One piece of advice to combat the stress and anxiety is to remind yourself that you're new to healing and that it'll take time to get good at it. Alright, enough with the negatives, let's talk about why you should main a healer. If you recall just a minute ago about me saying that stress is one of the main reasons people don't take on healing, it's important to call out that the reasons behind the stress are caused because of the unique challenges that you get with healing that you don't get with other roles. It's your job to keep the group alive. Yes, even the stupid players. Every composition and player brings a different learning curve and a challenge when you're a healer. Sometimes you will get the smoothest group that requires very little healing, while other times you'll get a group that you feel like is purposely trying to watch you eat through your mana. The unique differences between group to group is one of those things that always keeps you on your feet as a healer and keeps the role engaging. Not only are the player base and group compositions constantly shifting, you also get to add the complexity of understanding dungeon damage patterns as well as weekly affixes, both which provide their own challenges. Even when you mastered your spec in the dungeons or raid, you then have the opportunity to start to maximize your damage while also trying to keep your group healthy. There is never a lack of a challenge when you're a healer, which for many is an excellent reason to heal and brings a refreshing perspective to WoW. The next reason is a simple one, but certainly one that is a benefit to a healer and worth calling out. Have you ever been a DPS in a queue for a dungeon? You remember that hour you waited trying to just get into queue? Well, for healers this is never a problem. Because healing is a responsibility that only so many people choose, there will always be a need for you as a healer across all aspects of PvE content. This is particularly great when you are running LFG or LFR because your queue times will be significantly less than that of a DPS player. The final, and extremely subjective reason for healing is simply because it's fun. All of the healing classes bring with them varying playstyles, and Blizzard has actually done a good job at getting them balanced more closely, making the stress of knowing which healer to play a little easier for newer players. Remember, you don't have to come into healing understanding everything or expecting that you're never going to let one of your teammates die or that your group will never wipe. You're going to fail Mythic Plus keys, and you're going to wipe countless times on heroic and Mythic grade bosses. This is just part of the experience and is what teaches you how to become a better and more proficient healer. For any of you watching this and considering healing, I would urge you to give it a try. I've always found it to be the most satisfying of the 3 roles, and the WoW community is always in need of more great healers. If you found this video helpful or interesting, let me know in the comments. Also, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to help support new content.